All right, welcome everyone. Okay. I am super happy to be with you all again. And today, this is actually part of my 4-part series. And we are talking about balancing the brain and the nervous system with the Brio Living philosophy. And we're actually on part 2 today, and we're talking about the seeding phase. And before we kind of launch into this, I'm going to spend a moment just introducing myself and just give you a bit of my background. So I know there's a lot of viewers out there who haven't met us before. So we are a naturopathic clinic. When I say we, there's a group of about 4 doctors, 4 naturopaths, and we are in Richmond, British Columbia. And we just wanted to share some of our knowledge and just some practical tips that we do to ensure that we keep healthy. And I'm really excited now. I'm doing 2 series right now, and one is I have a background in Chinese medicine as well as I'm a naturopath. And another series I'm doing is just the wisdom of Chinese medicine. The series that I'm doing here, my focus is more on brain health. And we're going to be talking about the different, I'm going to take you on a journey of what I typically do with my patients at the Brio Clinic, where I'm walking them through kind of the weeding, seeding, feeding, and then thriving stage. And then we're going to unpack that today. Today, the 3 key points I want you to take out of the visit today is we're going to be unpacking what the seeding phase is, and this is a very dynamic phase, and I'm really excited to share this with you. We're also going to be talking about inflammation and what happens with the brain and your mental health with inflammation. And I'm going to give you some practical tips and share with you what I do to deal with inflammation. And then the 3rd point is we're going to be talking about detoxification. And we're going to be taking a deeper dive into detoxification. And the goal, again, is to support brain health. Okay, let's get started there. Okay, so what is the Brio Living philosophy? And this is our clinic's step-by-step approach. It's a roadmap that we use to really help patients move from only being focused on symptoms, and we're going to guide them to really transforming their health. And I just want to take a pause here because I've been in practice for about 15 years, and I think the first 10 plus years, I've really worked hard to helping my patients really get rid of their symptoms. And examples are like, depression, let's say anxiety. My goal was to use as much natural means as possible to really get rid of these, depressive symptoms, anxiety, help people sleep a lot better. And that's what we really focused on. Now, the past few years, I think what's been really, really exciting for me is I'm now guiding patients to moving from just dealing with the symptoms of like depression, of anxiety, but really helping them transform their health. Really helping them create this more abundant health, or what we call radiant health. I want to help them bring more joy back to their life there. And that's why we've done our best to help our patients journey through this. And I've really identified over the years, in my 15 years of practice, there are these distinct phases. And we're using a garden analogy where we're talking about the weeding phase, the seeding phase, the feeding phase, and the thriving phase. And why I'm excited sharing these different phases to you is because I've really witnessed over the years how amazing the human body is, how amazing our brain is. Especially a lot of my patients come to see me just really, really ill, and they've just got piles and piles of chronic conditions, and they're just feeling terrible. But as I journey with them, they're so much healthier now. They have a completely different outlook on life, and that's what actually really excites me right now. So I think that's why I'm really passionate in sharing with you this concept here. Now, for those who didn't get a chance to see last time, I'm going to just spend a moment unpacking that again. So we like the garden analogy because I think it's easy to understand. So the weeding phase. Weeding phase is usually when we help our patients we're focusing on the weeds at first. And the weeds are symptoms. The symptoms and pain is an easy one to understand. When patients are coming in to see us first, our goal is we're going to help you get rid of that pain. But if the pain keeps coming back, we need to help you figure out, well, why is that coming back? And that's when we move into the next phase, which is like the seeding phase there. But other things to think about in the weeding phase is weeding phase is really important to do a proper assessment. We really want to understand and really, everyone's very unique in their situation, so we take the time to really understand what's going on. And our goal is to really prevent future weeds from coming up. So we focus a lot on the soil, and we all know the healthier the soil is in a garden, the less weeds will show up. And I think that's very, very important. And the soil in our body is what we're calling the cellular terrain. That environment in our body, in between all of our cells, which affects how our cells communicate. This is an area that both Dr. Neetu and I, Dr. Vanessa, Dr. Karen, we all really want to just zero in on the cellular terrain there. So that's the weeding phase. Now the seeding phase, this is where we're tilling the soil. This is where we're helping our patients really get to the root problem of what's going on. So we're moving beyond just taking care of the boo-boos and the symptoms there. We're helping explore what's causing all of this. And in the seeding phase, we're looking for what are potential kind of imbalances that are happening. And again, today we're going to unpack that further. But in the seeding phase, what's exciting is we're changing, we're breaking some bad habits, we're establishing good habits. But this is the exciting part where we're really planting kind of new seeds of change there. Now, the next phase, we're going to the feeding phase. And the feeding phase is really like a deeper healing. And this is where we see some dramatic changes. This is where our patients are really breaking through a lot of this stuckness that they're experiencing for years. And that stuckness often happens mentally. They're stuck. They're stuck feeling that, my life can't get better, or they're stuck feeling, this problem that I'm having can't get any better. And what's incredibly exciting in the feeding phase is that transformation that we really get to witness. And once we start getting things back in balance, usually people come to see us for physical, symptoms, but once we start working with them, we're exploring mental emotional symptoms. We're starting to explore even deeper spiritual symptoms there. So that's really exciting with the feeding phase. And then the thriving phase, this is when our patients they're really living their true authentic self. This is where we see that transformation where it's not just about them. They know that they're part of a bigger community. This is when they're there's an outward blessing to others. So that thriving phase is incredible to witness when patients reach this phase. So those are the phases. I just want to do a very simple recap there. And also, last time we talked about the weeding phase, and I invite you to just please take a look at what we talked about last time, where I had people do an assessment to really check in with their emotions. And we talked about distressing emotions. We talked about positive emotions. And I also gave you a bit of a game plan of what I'm doing. And if you recall back, it was in early April. And in early April, this was very new to us, this pandemic that we're going through. So I just shared with people some of the tips that I was doing. I was doing a lot of journaling at that time. Deep breathing was part of my routine. I really established some amazing habits there. And I met regularly with my team there. So that's what we talked about last time. So I invite you to check that one out. So let's dive in. Let's get into the seeding phase. And as I said earlier, the seeding phase is quite dynamic. This is where we're tilling that soil. And this is where we're figuring out the root cause of a lot of, or the main symptoms that people are coming to see us with. And this is where I'm trying to help people figure out like which system is just not in balance. And I want to give you an example. I treat a lot of skin conditions also in my practice. I treat a lot of eczema, for example. And I work with kids, really young kids who are several months old, to toddlers, to just young kids with eczema. And I love treating kids when we can work with them at a young age, where we can get the body back into balance. And I find that they recover so much faster. Kids just recover so much faster. Now, I also work with a lot of adults with eczema or with different dermatitis. Now, that's a lot trickier. And this is what I often see. Most of the patients that I work with, I deal with a lot of severe eczema conditions. They've been using medication, whether it's steroids or biologics, but they've been using it for years. And that's really been suppressing a lot of their symptoms, because once they get a flare up, they're panicking. And I know firsthand this. My daughter has eczema as well, so I've witnessed this. But when people go into a panic, they want to apply something topical right away just to get rid of the symptoms there. But over time, the medication, what it's doing is it's suppressing, right? It's pushing the symptoms down. And I bring all of this up because in the seeding phase, what's quite remarkable is when I'm giving the body a chance to heal, there's often a little bit of this resurgence in some of these old symptoms that happen. And I just want to share about that because that scares a lot of people. I mean, in the seeding phase, when I work with my patients with skin conditions, they're already feeling better because in the weeding phase, we did a lot of naturopathic ways of helping with their symptoms. But I'm walking along with my patients and saying, look, we need to figure out what's going on. Is the reason why your eczema is flaring is because you've got some imbalance in this inflammation in your body? Or how is your gut health? Like, this is where we're figuring out what's going on at a deeper level. And sometimes when we're uncovering these deeper levels, for over years you've been suppressing things, so some of those symptoms do come back out. And so this is the exciting part of the seeding phase, where I get to put on my detective hat and I'm searching for the why with every single patient. And we are all very unique individuals. And I said, I treat a lot of skin conditions, but everybody is very unique. Same thing with, mental health, brain health, all those symptoms, we're all really, really unique. And I'll give you an example of what, why I need to take the time and search for the underlying why. Just last week, I had 2 patients that I was working with that were dealing with anxiety. And I think right now this has been a very difficult time for people. So anxiety is a real big problem. So both of these patients had anxiety symptoms, they had restlessness, they had insomnia, and they had tremendous amount of worry. Now, patient 1 had a tremendous amount of stress, and they were overwhelmed. Now, they're overwhelmed because they had so much work to do. Their workplace laid off a number of different people. So all of a sudden, this amount of work just piled on top of them. And there's also this sort of insecure, like they're not secure whether their job is going to be there after this wage subsidy, after the next 3 months there. So there's an incredible amount of anxiety just because she was just so overwhelmed. Now contrast that to patient number 2. Patient number 2 also had a lot of stress, tons of anxiety, but she was in a completely different situation. She actually had lost her job. She was incredibly worried about the future. She was worried about, her finances, getting food on the table. So both these people came to see me for anxiety, and I really had to understand what was the underlying cause because my approach is very different. And so that's why I really want to, unpack the seeding phase. This is an example of, what the doctors here at Brio, this is what we do in the seeding phase. We really personalize our treatment approach to each individual. and and we're exploring the underlying why, the underlying cause. And I alluded earlier about other underlying causes. And over the years, I've really identified that there's a few systems in the body that tend to go out of balance. And I want to make it clear here that in this stage, I'm not chasing symptoms. I'm actually trying to figure out, well, based on this individual, what's a slightly weaker system? I'll give you an example. For my own personal health journey, I grew up with a lot of digestive-related issues. I think the root cause to a lot of my immune issues was because I had just a terrible digestive system when I was younger. And compounding all of that, I took a lot of antibiotics there when I was younger for dealing with infections there, but that further worsened my digestive system. So my digestive system is one of the weaker systems in me. So I've had to work over years to really strengthen the digestive system. Now, not only the digestive system do I focus on with my patients, I'm looking for, is there an issue with the detoxification system? Is there an issue with the neurological system? Is there an issue with the hormonal system? How about the inflammatory system? Or like I said earlier, the immune system. So in this seeding phase, again, this is what I'm looking for patterns with my patients there, and I'm trying to identify that. And I know some of you out there might say, well, maybe it's all of that. Well, this is what I'm going to be in a very careful method, like a very organized way. One of the strategies I do is I've really seen over the years, by starting with the digestive system, strengthening the digestive system, I'm able to impact several systems at the same time there. So I can get into more details with that, one-on-one with patients, or if you have a specific question, definitely please comment. Now, I'm going to move on to today. We're going to unpack two systems in this seeding phase. Like I said earlier, we're going to talk more about the inflammatory system, and we're going to talk about the detoxification system. So right now I'm going to move into the inflammatory system. Now, the goal here is to extinguish the inflammation so we can help the brain really thrive, so we can help mental health and brain health really get better. So in point number 2, when we're dealing with inflammation, I'm going to talk about 3 things. What causes inflammation? I'm going to talk about allergies, food sensitivities and allergies that can affect the neurological system. And I'm going to share with you what I'm doing personally to help deal with inflammation in my life. Okay, so we're going to dive into this a little bit more. So, okay, what causes inflammation? Now, you've all experienced maybe like a sore elbow if you've bumped into something, you've injured your elbow, or if you've experienced a sore throat. You can identify that there's pain, there's swelling, there's heat there. So those are the hallmark signs of inflammation. Now, inflammation in the brain, does that occur? Most definitely it does, but we don't often feel it like we do with a sore elbow or like a sore throat there. But our immune system is what manages a lot of inflammation in our entire system. The immune system is just brilliant, and I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about the immune system. But the immune system is what's really protecting us from viruses, protecting us from bacteria, protecting us from a lot of just infections and foreign invaders there. And when the immune system detects a foreign invader, it releases white blood cells. It releases these chemicals called cytokines that alert our body, and it prepares our body to attack these foreign invaders there. So overall, I want to say that inflammation is actually a good thing. So I don't want people to think that inflammation is always a bad thing, because we need to have inflammation to really protect our system. Now, what happens is when the inflammation goes out of control or when it attacks the body, that's when this becomes a problem. Now, this makes me think of a story back when I was in second year medical school. In my naturopathic training, I was studying down in Washington State, and I had Dr. Rich Fredrickson, and he was a brilliant man. Now, he taught at the University of Washington, UW Medical School, and then he also taught at Bastyr University, the naturopathic school that I went to. Now, Dr. Fredrickson, he taught us pathology, he taught us histology, and I still remember for the first 6 months of our pathology course, he spent 6 months talking about inflammation. And all my classmates and I were like, what is going on? Why isn't he talking about disease processes? We want to learn about disease processes. This is what we signed up for. But there was so much wisdom of why he taught us about inflammation, because in those 6 months, we really learned and understand what's happening in the body. And it turns out that every single disease process in the body, whether it's cancer, whether it's asthma, whether it's a brain, whether it's like Alzheimer's, it's all related to this inflammatory reaction there. So that was really important that Dr. Fredrickson took that time to explain that to us. So I want to say this again, the root cause of all diseases, and everyone in Western medicine, so my medical friends totally agree with this, as well as all my naturopathic friends, we all believe that inflammation is the root cause of a lot of diseases there. Okay, it looks like I have a question there. I'm on my phone. I'm going to try to do my best to scroll through all of this. So my says it smell like that. Okay. So there's some comments here about some an eczema case where, it was on a part of the leg there, and then they took a bit of steroid, and it seems that there's a systemic imbalance that's happening. Now, I apologize because I can't read more of the comment there because of how limited my phone size screen is, but I will address that later, and I'll go into further details there in the comments there. But I just wanted to comment, that is something that I often see with when you're suppressing something by taking a steroid, the body wants to release this inflammation, right? The eczema patch, let's say, started on the thigh. We put some steroid cream on it, and then it shows up somewhere else. I have seen this in many of my patient cases there. So I hope I'm answering that for you, and if not, I will address that later. So thank you for that question there. Now, I also want to just mention that when inflammation is out of balance, we start seeing autoimmune conditions. So I mentioned like asthma, but things like cardiovascular disease, things like diabetes, again, all inflammatory processes. Now, because I'm focusing a little bit more on mental health and I'm focusing on the brain, we see things like depression, we see things like dementia, even autism and Alzheimer's. Those are now believed to be inflammatory processes. And I was in medical school 20 years ago, and we didn't learn it that way. We really learned it as separate systems. We didn't learn that the body's inflammation can really affect the brain's inflammation. So a lot of cutting-edge information is coming through. And actually, I've been spending the past 3 or 4 years really researching this information. So for those of you who are interested, please stay tuned to the end of today's masterclass. I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit more information on how you can learn more. So the science now is very clear in showing a few things are causing inflammation. So I'm going to list these, and feel free to write these down. So we know that an inflammatory diet is terrible for inflammation. So things like sugars, poor quality fats, processed foods, a lot of the additives in the foods that we're eating, they are pro-inflammatory. They cause so much inflammation in the body. Food allergies. You hear a lot about gluten, peanut allergies. You hear about dairy allergies. You see a lot of imbalanced digestive system. and I talked about my own personal experience, and I helped so many patients really rebalance their gut health. And there's that gut immune system that is so intertwined. And I've said this in other lectures, but we know that 60% of the immune system actually resides in our digestive tract. So having an imbalanced digestive system can really lead to a lot of inflammation. There's a toxic load in our bodies, and later on I'm going to talk way more about detoxification, but the toxicity is really causing more inflammation. It's confusing our immune system. Our immune system is working so hard at trying to get rid of these toxins there. Low-grade hidden chronic infections, and this is actually becoming more and more of a problem. These hidden inflammation that's happening, and the inflammation is so low grade that we're not really seeing fevers anymore, but we can tell through our immune system by testing the blood that there's these low grade infections, and that's wreaking havoc on our immune system. Stress is also another thing that's really affecting inflammation, and as well as just poor nutrients. We're either not absorbing the nutrients or just not eating the nutrients there. And poor sleep. We just are not repairing the body. We're not regenerating because of poor sleep there. So now, just zeroing in on what is actually happening to the brain when the brain is inflamed. Like I said earlier, you don't really necessarily feel this like sore throat. You'll feel that right away, but in a brain, you don't necessarily feel this sore brain. Although, symptoms of brain fog is something that I'm seeing so much more in my practice. And in my 15 years, really in the past 6-7 years, I've just seen more issues around focus problems, memory problems, brain fog. And I have such an interest in helping people transform and just really, breaking that, because, and I'll share with you again a bit later, I just came off of a detox myself, and just the amount of energy that I'm feeling, the clarity that I'm feeling. And I feel that I'm actually quite healthy already, but even just doing a light detox, that amount of clarity and focus, I just feel so much better. So now what happens in an inflamed brain is this: the neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are those tiny little chemicals that communicate from one brain cell to another, that neural communication. Inflammation prevents that from happening. So our neurotransmitters aren't functioning properly. Our cellular communication, that is failing. That is just not as fast as it should be. Our enzyme production, our bodies produce an incredible amount of protein and enzymes, but these enzymes aren't being produced because our body's resources are dealing with inflammation, and we don't have our resources to build as many enzymes, or there's problems with our enzymes because they're not built properly because of lack of nutrients, for example. And then our mental processing really slows down. And I think a lot of you probably agree, maybe over the years, is it simply like an aging process? And that's a question that I engage with a lot of my patients. Are we just simply aging? We're just getting older and this is what comes with it? No, I don't believe so. I just believe that the increase in inflammation, the increase in toxicity, I've really seen that. And I have a lot of confidence in explaining to my patients that, and guiding them through this journey, because when they do clean up their body, when they do deal with the inflammation, they all feel better. And that's the exciting part of it. And that's what I really want to share with you. Now, point number 2, I'm going to shift into food sensitivities and the brain. And this is something that I do have plenty of experience with, because, and I've shared this in other situations, but I learned about food sensitivities, 15 years ago. I learned about this with my daughter. My daughter's now almost 15 right now, but when she was just a year and a bit old, she had terrible eczemas. And I took her to so many different practitioners. I took her to all these doctors, but it was really finding her food sensitivity that really made a difference. And I just want to talk a bit more about the difference with food sensitivities, because it's a little bit controversial out there now, because I think sometimes it's the naming of it, because some people are talking about, well, what's the difference between a food allergy and a food sensitivity? Now, what I'd like to explain to my patients is usually I keep the word allergy for something that's more of a bigger response in the immune system. And a sensitivity is a little bit more of a milder response there. And I'm going to talk a bit about the difference between IgE versus IgG. Okay, now those are immune globulins in the body, and that impacts our immune system. Bear with me, this is not going to be a lot of biochemistry or anything. It's not going to be that difficult. But just think of IgE. Think of the E as emergency. Now, all IgE reactions are not necessarily emergencies, but I'll use my daughter as an example. She has a peanut allergy. And with a peanut allergy, she has been exposed to peanuts. And what happens is the immune system kicks in right away. Within seconds to minutes, her immune system is causing all this inflammation. It really wants to try to get this peanut toxin out of her system. So she starts swelling. Now, the problem is in an IgE reaction, it's often, well, in her case, it's life-threatening. Her throat will close up, difficulty breathing there. And so that's an IgE reaction, and it responds very, very quickly. Now, contrast to that, IgG, think of IgG as the G as gradual. And this is what I explain to a lot of my patients, where when I test for food sensitivities, this is where I'm mostly testing for IgG reactions. And this is gradual. This is, so for my daughter, for example, I use this example a lot. She had a soy reaction. She was allergic to soy milk, but we would give her soy milk Sunday morning. She was totally fine all day Sunday. She was totally fine all day Monday, but Monday night before bed, she started developing her eczema around the corners of her mouth. And my wife and I, we were scratching our heads. What is going on? She had such a clean diet. Why is she having this reaction? And it turns out that when we did our blood test, we found out that she was very sensitive on the IgG side to soy. So in her body, it took her more than 24 hours before the symptoms actually showed up in her body. So that's quite typical for IgG reactions. So let me bring it back to the brain. And this is what I often see with my patients. The more I'm testing IgG, I'm finding that a lot more of my patients are quite sensitive to different foods, everyday foods. This is what I'm seeing gluten sensitivities. This is where I'm seeing dairy sensitivities. This is where I'm seeing egg sensitivities. And they may, have the food on Monday, and then a few days later, they're starting to get a little bit of a brain fog. They're starting to get maybe their anxiety and they don't know why. So I just want you to be mindful of could it be a food sensitivity? Now, I want to maybe further explain how a food sensitivity, maybe talk a bit more about what happens, because more and more experts are now understanding that if you are having a sensitivity to the foods, it's actually a whole body, it's a whole systems reaction. And there's something in naturopathic medicine that we teach a lot about is called leaky gut syndrome. And the leaky gut syndrome is, I like to explain it this way. Imagine that in our digestive tract, we have the lining of our system, or lining of our digestive tract. They are these tight junctions there. So the cells are tightly close together. And in a normal functioning digestive tract, a food particle, after it's being, digested and broken down, it will get into our body, into our bloodstream by going into a cell. It gets tagged properly, and then it goes into our bloodstream and off to the liver. So that's a normal functioning. So so let's say a banana molecule floating in your digestive tract, it gets absorbed inside one of our enteric cells, one of our digestive cells. Then it gets tagged properly. Okay, it's a banana cell, and then it goes into the bloodstream. Then our immune system sees it. Okay, it's got a tag. It's a banana molecule. Let's leave it alone. Now, what's happening in a leaky gut syndrome is this systemic inflammation is causing our cells to now swell. So they're swelling a bit more. And now there's a little bit of a gap in between the cells. Now, this little gap, some of these food particles might sneak in into it, and it doesn't go properly through the cell. It bypasses it, it sneaks in, and then it doesn't get the proper tagging. Then our immune system gets really confused. They're like, wait a minute, that banana molecule, it looks familiar, but it doesn't have a tag. Let's mount an immune response to it. So that is leaky gut. And that now the next time you eat like a banana, you're going to have a reaction to it because your immune system is awfully confused there. So I just wanted to share with you just a little bit of how a leaky gut can cause systemic inflammation. And this systemic inflammation can lead to issues around brain health, inflammatory systems into the brain there. Now, in my practice, I do see a lot of my patients that might have gluten sensitivity, dairy sensitivities. I even said egg sensitivities that can cause some mental health or brain issues there. Now, I want to share with you now in my point 3 is what are the steps that I personally do to reduce inflammation? And I'm going to separate it into some of the bad stuff that I try to avoid. Well, I guess I shouldn't label it as bad stuff, but these are the things I really try to avoid because it compounds the inflammation in my body. Now, for those who know me well, I have a history of being a sugar addict. I love sugar. And for those who know my story, like I gained an extra 50 pounds on top of what I have right now because of my poor diet. So sugar is a big problem that, exacerbates the immune system, makes things worse, and it really promotes inflammation. So really work hard at cutting that out, cutting out the sugar there. And, dealing with food sensitivities. What I've done also is I shared with you my story about my digestive system, and I've worked really hard over the years at just healing my digestive system, really finding out what foods work for my system, what foods don't work for my system. For example, like I am very diligent at eating a lot of cooked foods now, rather than raw salads, for example, there. It just doesn't work well for my system. And I follow the TCM or the Chinese medicine approach where I'll lightly steam or I'll lightly cook my vegetables. I take a lot of probiotics there. I'll ferment my own foods. So those are the things that I'm actively doing to just heal my digestive system. I'm also personally really removing, I'm trying to remove as much toxins. Actually, good question. I think, thanks, Jess. Are all sugars inflammatory? This is a great question. And I'm going to answer it this way. There are some sugars that are way worse. So the first one I am going to say is high fructose corn syrup. Please do your best to avoid high fructose corn syrup. And these are hidden in a lot of the foods. And I know I was just had a conversation with a patient the other day. I know she loves bubble tea or she loves going out, and that's her treat there. And for her case, I just went, you really have to be careful for the high fructose corn syrup because that really wreaks havoc on the body. It's a GMO and it's just terrible. Catherine, good question. Yes, this will all be posted later on. I will do a summary, and I'll summarize a lot of this on our blog, and I'll actually have all the links to it. So don't worry, you're missing the first part, no problem. But I'm going to go back to Jess's question about the sugar. So high fructose corn syrup, and just simple white sugar. Now, a lot of patients have asked me, well, what about these alternative sweeteners like stevia or monk fruit? Those are much better. And so there is a difference in the amount of the different sugars, and for sure, like the white sugars, the high fructose corn syrup, those are just more pro-inflammatory. So I hope that answers. I mean, that was an excellent question, and I know my brain's kind of shifting into a different mode where I want to give you maybe a bit more technical stuff. But maybe I'll try to comment it on the comments there and address it that way. So that's a great question. Now I want to move over into some of the good stuff that I'm trying to add a bit more to my diet. So the whole foods diet, I'm really trying to work hard at just having a good whole foods diet. And I'm just going to share this with you. I know a lot of people just during the past, let's say 6 weeks with being in the pandemic, it's been really tough, and we've had our sugar cravings and all that. But I have a number of patients who are doing really well right now, and I'll just myself right now. I've actually lost 8 pounds over the past 6 weeks. There, I have gained more muscle mass, and I've just really improved my habits. I've slept a lot better, and I just wanted to encourage you that this is totally possible. And I know, and it just takes a little bit of a shift. And I did a talk on the power of habits. So I want you to please go and take a look at that, because it's so possible. And I just got some awesome feedback from a patient recently, just saying how she's really thriving right now. I mean, it's been really terrible for her. They've had to shut down their business, but I think they made an important decision to stay healthy. And I just wanted to encourage people to, this is a great time for you to have a bit of time, involve the kids, be as healthy as possible. So the other things that I'm doing is I'm just eating a lot of colorful fruits and vegetables. I'm sleeping a lot better. I'm exercising a lot more. I'm personally taking more of my Wellness Essentials Brain Health. This is a great formula that is, there is the phytomulti that I've shared about. It's got a great omega-3. So I'm just working hard at just lowering the inflammation and finding ways just to improve my brain health. And maybe just some other things I just want to mention as well is I'm very intentional with my cooking as well. Like I'm putting a lot more garlic and ginger, and I'm adding more turmeric. I'm doing different soups there. I have time. I'm experimenting with different spices there. So those are the things that I'm doing to improve the inflammation in my body, or reduce that. Now, I want to transition into point number 3 right now. And point number 3 is enhancing detoxification to really support brain health and mental health there. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about toxic load, and I'm going to pose this question, and I think this is an important question. So if we have so much toxins in our environment, why are some people getting sick, and why are other people not getting sick? And that's an awesome question. And then I'm also going to share with you, what am I doing to really up my detox game? So, and actually, I don't want to forget this, so I'm going to mention it right now, but there's been a lot of great questions in the past few weeks. Patients have been emailing us, asking about detoxification and asking about, just great questions. We are going to be doing a group virtual detox. We've never done this before, but I think this is a great time, because I just came off of a detox myself, and I told you that I ended up losing like 8 pounds. I just feel really good energy-wise, but also just like my mental health just feels so much better. And so we're going to be doing a group detox. So please stay tuned to an email. And what I'll try to do at the end of when I've done this masterclass, I'll put a couple of links in there so you can register. So it's a free webinar, and it's coming up this Monday, May 4th at 5 p.m. So I don't want to forget that. So for those of you who are interested, come join us. And Dr. Vanessa and I are actually going to tag team, and we're going to get into a little bit more details on detoxification, and I'll share with you what I did recently. But I want to talk about detox right now, because our bodies actually have this incredible ability to self-clean. And we have our organs that can eliminate waste products. And I touched on this when I shared about detoxification with my Chinese medicine series there. But I'm going to repeat a couple of things, which I think is very important. So we've got incredible organ systems. We have our liver that gets rid of soluble toxins. We've got our gut that gets rid of, our liver gets rid of fat soluble toxins. Our kidney gets rid of water soluble toxins. Our lungs gets rid of gases, these toxic gases like CO2. Our skin is involved. Our gut is involved. So we have a built-in detox system, which is incredible. The more I geek out on it, the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, wow, what an amazing design here. Now, unfortunately, with our modern day lifestyle, we have just overwhelmed our system, and it's just things aren't functioning properly. So, what are specifically the toxins? There's exogenous toxins, and these are toxins that are coming up from the outside. So this is things like the pollution that we're experiencing, pesticides, additives. These are the things that we find in our produce. We're bombarded with that. So that's, a form of exogenous toxins. Formaldehyde in a lot of the cosmetics that people are using, the lotions, the cosmetics, the creams, those actually have a lot of like formaldehyde and other toxins. But even in our system, in our offices or in our homes, our carpets, there's formaldehydes. There's off-gassing from furniture. You might have heard of phthalates. Phthalates are from our plastic containers. You've heard of BPA, things like that. That's something that it's hard for us to get rid of. Dioxins. Dioxins are just what's used to bleach, papers or paper products there. And then endogenous toxins that are from within the body. Yeah, we actually, our body creates it. And last time when I was sharing about this, I had some great questions from people that a lot of athletes get this, they understand this, but there is a lot of, there's a byproduct of metabolism. And for my athletes out there who work out hard, who lift weights, the next day they're incredibly sore. They have a buildup of lactic acid, and that lactic acid is what is a type of toxin that's caused by metabolism. And even our breathing, respiration, CO2 is actually a toxin in the body. So those are examples of toxins. And if you don't think, I'll put it this way, if you think that toxins don't affect your brain, you are totally wrong. Because, and actually, to be honest with you, when I came out of my medical program, I didn't learn this in medical school. I didn't learn that things cross the blood-brain barrier. And when I finally understood this, and the way I approach and I treat my patients, which I work with a systemic detox, I find ways of just treating the whole body. We can treat the brain. The brain can be so much healthier. Because I think the old method is we would find medication or drugs to just simply target the brain. But what I'm trying to say here is very different, where the body is so well designed that if we take care of the entire system, if we help the body detoxify, it will clear out those toxins from the brain, from the body there. So I just want to share with you actually one poster. I know it's going to be hard to see, but I will put this in the link so you will all get a copy of this. But I want to just talk a bit more details about, how the 3 phases of detoxification works there. And this is a great poster that talks about the liver organ, but actually it talks about all the other systems. And I'll just unpack it just very briefly, because I think this is important to talk about, because a lot of my patients will go maybe online and they'll look up, how to do a detox, and they'll take a whole bunch of olive oil with cayenne pepper with a bunch of lemon, and that's their detox. Or they'll buy a kit online that will, it's a bunch of laxatives, and they're just, pooping things out, and they think that that's a detox. And in fact, that could be very dangerous. So some of my patients, where before I even consider doing a detox, I run lab tests. I run like a liver panel to make sure it's safe for them. And so this is the warning that I want to give to all of you. Please don't go out there and just do any type of trendy detox out there, because what I have seen happen is sometimes people don't understand the process of it. So they'll take some herbs, or they'll do something, and they release the toxins that's maybe trapped in their fat cells, that's maybe trapped in their liver, but they don't understand how to clear it out of their body, and it actually recirculates somewhere else, and it can pose more of a problem. So in this poster, I just want to highlight where, in the 3 phases of detoxification, this is what happens in the liver. In that first phase, the liver takes a fat-soluble toxin, and a fat-soluble toxin is really hard to get rid of. And I'll explain it this way. The body, again, is super smart. If you get a toxin that's in your system, it wants to trap it. It wants to get rid of it. So it actually will put it in a fat form. And the fat form is locked in there. And it's trying to protect the rest of the body. But the fat form is really difficult to clear out. So what actually happens in phase 1 is that fat soluble toxin becomes more water soluble. But in doing so, that water-soluble toxin is far more toxic in many cases. So yeah, in that second phase, the second phase is now taking that water-soluble toxin and neutralizing it. And that's super important. So the phase 2 is something that a lot of people don't really fully understand. So by just taking a bunch of herbs, sometimes you'll just do phase 1. And meanwhile, you have all these more reactive toxins that are circulating. So it's very important for phase 2 to neutralize those toxins. And then phase 3 is something that, is a little bit more newer in our research. Is phase 3 is actually having the right nutrients and ingredients, right nutrients or herbs to help support the elimination of it. So it's actually quite brilliant how the liver works, because it will take that neutralized toxin and then dump it out through our bile, through the bile salts there. So it's dumped out through our digestive tract, and then we can actually eliminate it through bowel movements there. So my patients who work with me, you know how important fiber is. I always talk about fiber. I always ask about bowel movements, regular bowel movements. It's so important there. So I just wanted to spend a moment just highlighting one part of this, detox phase, but you will get a link to it so you can maybe study it a little bit more. And I think this is actually a very, very helpful poster here. Okay, so I'm going to move on to my point number 2, and I've got another about 10 more minutes. So thanks for staying with me. I think this is great information. Now, so the question is, if we're all exposed to like a tidal wave of toxins, why do some of us get sick and others don't? So I've thought of this question for years, and it wasn't until I started understanding genetics, and especially epigenetics, until I really came up with a good answer. And now simply, some people obviously are more exposed to toxins, based on your work or based on, your hobbies there. So I have some patients who are, we live close to an airport, so there's a lot of aircraft engineers. They're exposed to a lot of the fuels there. Dry cleaners, for example. Years ago when I was a student down in Seattle, I remember one of my first cases was a lady who was in a dry cleaning situation, and she had so many toxic signs and symptoms there. So that's very memorable to me. So depending on your workload, your hobbies, you could be exposed to a lot more. But not everyone, that's not the case for everyone. So number 2, the point is the genetic factor it does matter. Some people, based on their genetics, they have the capacity to handle more of a toxic load, while others don't. Now, an important take-home message is this. It doesn't mean that just because your genetic predisposition is maybe a bit weaker, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a problem. And I'm going to talk a little bit about epigenetics there. Epigenetics is the study of changes in gene activity, which are not caused by changes in the DNA sequence. It's the study of gene expression. Okay, let me kind of unpack that a bit. So the DNA that you're going to inherit from mom and dad, that doesn't change. So I can never change the color of my eyes, the color of my hair. That's inherited. But what's quite amazing in our understanding of genetics in just the past 2 or 3 years is the gene expression. Like our genetics have a code, and for us to then, that code has to interact with our environment. Our environment has to signal to that gene to then produce a certain amount of a certain protein, and our environment influences that. So this is called gene expression, and So what I'm trying to say here, it's actually a combination of your inheritance plus your environment, which really affects your gene expression there. And in another talk in the future, I'll go into way more detail about this because I can geek out for hours about this. But I just want the take-home message is you can influence your gene expression. Your environment matters, which therefore what I'm trying to say is your lifestyle matters. What you intake matters there. So you can actually greatly influence how your genes are expressed. I hope that makes sense there. I want to just share with you an important kind of nutrient that not many people have heard of, but patients in my practice, I talk about this a lot, but for those who may not be familiar with glutathione, glutathione is a very important master detoxifier. In fact, glutathione actually is naturally produced in our body. And what glutathione does is it's an incredibly sticky molecule, or it's like what I call a biomagnet there. Toxins just stick to it, and it's a high sulfur kind of type of molecule there. And when the toxins stick to it, the glutathione gets excreted out through the body in a very efficient manner there. So I just want you to keep that in mind. In order to help produce more glutathione in your system, you need to eat more sulfur-containing foods. So now I'm going to talk about my third point, which is, what am I doing for upping my detox game there? So I am taking a lot more cruciferous vegetables, and those are high in a lot of sulfur compounds, which helps make a lot more glutathione in my body there. So things like cabbage, broccoli, collard greens, kale, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, mustard greens. I really aim to eat about 2 cooked cups a day. I'll have it in lunch or I'll have it at dinner there. I'm eating a lot more garlic and onions these days there to up my detox game. I'm drinking a lot more green tea. And simply I'm just having a lot more hydration, just flushing toxins out of my system there. Now, what am I taking actually to improve more glutathione in my system? I used to take actually a lot of glutathione supplements, and I still do. And in fact, glutathione supplements are actually a little bit controversial because some studies came out showing that our stomach acid can break down the glutathione. So if you take glutathione capsules, you may not be actually absorbing all of it. So I've been doing a lot of research in a different form of glutathione. But I'm also taking something called NAC, N-acetylcysteine, and this is a precursor to glutathione. So this is something that I take, and again, if you have more specific questions, just reach out to me and I can go into more detail there, because I don't want to necessarily prescribe anything right now. That's not my intention at all. I just want to give you more knowledge, and I think knowledge is more power, and you've got more to use to change your detoxification strategies there. I'm also taking a lot of vitamin C personally. And so those are some simple things. So again, cruciferous vegetables, I am taking more like vitamin C and acetylcysteine there, my omega-3s. Those are all vital at helping me detoxify better. And I already mentioned this earlier, but I am going to, again, we're going to talk more about detoxification, and we're going to try to do it in a group setting. And the advantage of doing it in a group setting is I'm going to do it alongside with you. Dr. Vanessa is going to be doing it alongside you. And we're going to try to structure it so there's an incredible amount of support there. And so the webinar is this Monday. You're going to be able to catch, more details of it. And the actual group detox, we're going to start May 11th there. And we're going to try to have regular check-ins so I can answer any questions for you. And we're just going to do this together. So I hope that helps there. So that's it for today. Now I have one announcement, but let me just kind of recap what we talked about today. So we talked about the seeding phase in the Brio methodology, or the Brio, the Brio philosophy there. We talked about inflammation. We talked about detoxification. And I hope you can take some of these pearls home to just help improve your overall health. And maybe the last thing I just wanted to announce here is I've spent a lot of years researching, and I'm just fascinated with brain health, and I'm just fascinated. And I'll share with you just my personal story. My grandmother had issues with dementia. My mom's having a lot of memory issues there. So this is something that, it's quite dear to my heart. And I went through a period of time in my life where I just had a lot of focus, concentration, memory issues there. And I'm just so excited with just the stuff that I've been learning and I've been doing personally that I've decided to put together a online course. And it's an online course, and I want to make it a really interactive course. So I'm still designing it, but my goal is to launch it this month to come alongside all of you and I'm planning it to be like an 8-week course. And I'm going to go through the different systems that you can improve to help ultimately improve brain health. And people with, mental health, dementia, like some of the research that I'm looking into that is just phenomenal to help, reverse some of these conditions there. So I want to share that with you in a more detailed setting. Or a more intimate setting, I guess. We're going to go into a lot more detail, and we're going to unpack that. And I'm going to have a lot of time for question and answer. We're going to make it really interactive. So that's the announcement. I want to share that with you. Please stay tuned. I'm going to try to let everyone know just via email and through Facebook there. Like always, I had a ton of fun just sharing this information. I went way over what I thought I was going to do, so I hope it's not like you're drinking from like a fire hose there. But yeah, I hope that this is helpful there. And again, we are posting this. I'll put a summary up that you can take your time and just rewatch this. I'll set up a few links for you just to learn a little bit more. And again, please comment, please ask questions, because we really want to support all of you through this time there. And thank you. In health and success. Take care.